Sketching is still the fastest and most intuitive way I know to turn an idea into something visual. Tracing paper, a pen, is just enough to get my thoughts down onto the paper. When I'm designing, I try to create as little friction as possible between an idea and the drawing. The project I'm working on here is the Architectural Futures Competition, a museum of architecture set on a sloping site, organised around a central gallery with public spaces stepping into the landscape. I'm thinking about relationships, where the gallery sits, how people move through the building, and how the spaces respond to the slope. Once I have something that feels spatially right, the next step is turning this sketch into an architectural drawing. The beauty and the challenge of architecture software is that it often introduces friction, simply because it steps away from the sketch. And what's interesting is how the transition can feel very different depending on the tools you use. And in this workflow, I will use Rayon, where the gap becomes much smaller. Before we get into it, if you want to follow along or try this workflow for yourself, there's a link in the description where you can create your free Rayon account. Now, I'm not using any special software for scanning here. I'm just using my notes app in my phone just to capture the sketch and bring it into the software. Now, of course, at this point, it is just a sketch. It's just going to be a base to the drawing that I'm going to build. The first step is importing the sketch as an image and scaling it correctly into Rayon. So to bring that scan now into the software, it's going to be really straightforward. Head up to the top left corner, and we're going to import it as a PDF. We'll select the image we want to import. We'll then import it as, let's do it as an image. Now in this case, because I actually had the site plan in the background of the drawing, it's going to be quite easy for me to scale this up and drop it into place and pull it in. We can use this back road here as a reference. But now this is going to give us the base to our drawing. So just to very quickly talk you through this design, the logic is that we want to respond to the slope by working alongside this gradual increase that runs up here parallel to this pathway. So we're designing something that almost follows that language of the park path, and then also extends out into this landscape down here, as this is the kind of views over the main landscape and the main park of this context. We then have this entry point here where we have a kind of junction. So I'm almost suggesting this is where the main point of access is for pedestrians and vehicle access into a car park, which then is going to create this kind of central point for the building to almost have a geometry and a language that opens up, creating this welcoming entrance to a reception, to a gallery space, to a cafe. And then we have workshops running parallel to this pathway, which has views over the landscape, as you can see here. And the idea is that we have this long rectilinear piece that's running parallel to that path, and we have these two geometries at either end that's breaking that rhythm. So to start actually drawing into this floor plan, what we want to do is create a new layer, which we're going to do here. We're going to do new layer and type that as wall. We're going to make sure that that is the assigned layer, and then when you come to the bottom here, we can click wall. And then you can see here that that is the active layer. You can then select your fill and thickness. So let's just start with a thicker outer wall, and we're not going to include a stroke. And all we're simply going to do is start tracing our geometry, start building a bit of a language. Now, of course, this is going to adjust and amend, and we're going to work into this as we go along. We want to make sure that, for example, these are parallel to one another, and we can work into that. We can select certain elements, we can copy them across to make sure that they're all running parallel to each other, like so. Now, what we're going to do here is work into the geometry a little bit further. I think the sketch is a little bit too rigid, so we're going to be quite flexible with this. In this case, we can almost select some of the walls as well and start pulling them into place. If we wanted to create a bit more of a geometry, we can then trim this by doing TX, which can then trim that wall. I've made this entrance much more generous, as you can see, whereas before it was a much smaller step entrance. And then I've also adjusted this geometry ever so slightly with a bit of a curved wall here to create a bit more of a better composition between this element and this element, as previously the geometry was a little bit too lopsided. And then if we turn off the sketch, you can see here now we have a floor plan to scale. Now the next touch is going to be starting adding some of the detail to the drawings, i.e. stairs, maybe some more geometry and line work to the drawings to just give it that slightly more detail that's required. In this case, we're going to start drawing some ramps and stairs down into this cafe area. And so we're just going to offset this by 2.5 meters in order to create a 2.5 meter wide ramp. We're then going to just indicate a sloping edge with then some steps that's stepping down into this space. We then have some external steps that we're going to work into, which now indicates this entry point into the building. And this creates the central access point into the building where you have the cafe to the right and the galleries to the left. And it creates that main anchor point into the building, with then your workshops and your ramps leading up to a higher level up the other end of the building. So we've now defined the spatial logic of the space, and we've got proportions and a general composition of our floor plan. At this stage, the design is obviously still evolving. It's precise, but can be flexible. Once external walls, internal partitions, and the general arrangement of the spaces have been set, openings are the next step in creating access and circulation between spaces. And so we have various elements here that will have different levels of permeability between the spaces. Particularly at this top end here where we have our workshops, we want to create a bank of curtain walling that runs across the building. So if we select the opening tool, you can see that you've got various options inside Rayon. I mean, there's hundreds of options here of different types of windows, different types of doors, curved windows, curtain walling systems. And so I'm just going to choose a curtain wall system that I can import into my model. And within those options, you have parametric blocks and normal blocks. And they're defined by this small icon in the top left corner, which defines it as a parametric block. A parametric block is particularly useful because you can extend certain elements, you can adjust certain elements without impacting the general geometry and composition of the block. Now, when you place it into your wall, you can then set it into place. And then using this toggle, as it's a parametric feature, you can extend and shorten the window depending on how many panes of glass you want. This is then defining a real permeability between these workshop spaces and the landscape. Now you can do the same with internal doors. In this case, we want a double internal door that we want to place for access into these workshops. We'll drop them into place. Once again, you can fix them in either direction. You can then copy them across your floor plan to populate them, scale them up and down using your parametric tools. And then as you can see here, we've created the general relationship between the spaces by creating openings and windows for access, light, but also for those views across the landscape, which is really important for this particular project. Once the shell of the building is in place, I can start adding the furniture. This will also help to refine the spaces and give a sense of scale. Now we're going to populate the drawing using the block library on the left-hand side here. The block library has access to thousands of blocks that you can use and import into your models. In this case, we want to focus in on the workshops, and so we're going to start looking at maybe some worktops or some 3D printers or some kind of activity that describe a workshop environment. You can search for blocks in two ways, either through libraries or blocks themselves. Libraries will have sets such as bathrooms, and then blocks you can actually search for individual items. Take the woodwork, for example. We're going to drag in this woodworking bench, these two options that we have, and we're going to start working into this floor plan to start representing this particular workshop space. Now you can rotate them, you can shift them, you can start scaling them up and down, although all of these blocks will be imported at 1:1, so there's no need to scale them. And you can see here you've got various different view options for each block. You've got side profile, a front profile, and a top profile. And we're going to simply rotate some of these together. We're going to mirror them. We're going to start positioning them and start building a bit of a workshop environment. We can mirror some of the elements here to start building the space and start adding some stools, some shelving, and start pulling all of these elements from the block library into the floor plan. And with a bit of work, you can build into your floor plan to have as much detail as this. And if we start adding some final stools into here and we zoom out of our drawing, you can start to see that I've copied across some of these elements, added in 3D printers, added in that activity to show the intended use of the space. And you can see here as we pan across, we've done the same for the reception desk. We've brought some lifts in there, we've got toilets, we've got the theatre space, and then we've also got all of the cafe and everything. So you can see how the furniture is really bringing the drawing to life. It not only provides a sense of scale, but it also brings a sense of activity to the building. If there are any blocks that you want to bring into your model that you can't find in the Rayon library and you maybe have a picture of, you can bring it into the model and actually generate a product, generate a block out of that image. And you can do that here using the Rayon AI panel. Furniture helps validate the plan. It shows scale, circulation, and how the spaces might actually be used. Rayon's block library makes this quick. Everything is to scale and available in multiple views for later drawings. One thing I'm always keeping conscious of is keeping the spirit of the sketch alive. This is where styling becomes important. Now you can already see in this drawing that there is a hierarchy. There's already a bit of a graphic touch with a hierarchy of thicknesses, wall thicknesses. We've got some dashed lines to indicate this kind of sketchy grid, structured tone of the floor plan. We've also got some elements that are slightly grayed out. But to show you how I've actually created this and how this works, is you can simply use the style panel. So if you select a certain element, head over to the right hand side here, and you can see that this is managed with your fill and stroke. So if you select your stroke, for example, you can then change that stroke to red. You can increase the opacity so it's much stronger in the drawing. But in this case, I'm going to keep it quite light as a 20% opaque black. And you can adjust your dash line by doing 10 times or 1 time to make it much more intense. I think 5 times was about the sweet spot, and you can adjust your line weight as well by changing this toggle here. Likewise with these walls, you can select this element, you can then change this fill to, let's say, red, and you can maybe change your stroke to red or black or however you feel fit. You can then adjust the thickness here as discussed previously, which is fairly straightforward. Now if you wanted to apply this style to the rest of these types of walls, what you can do is you can select this element. Let's just set it back to black for the time being. We can save that style as a 0.5 black wall. We can then select other elements, do pick style and select that element. Or alternatively, you can select the element, click replace all and choose a style that is saved in your library. Now take these lines for example, currently in the drawing they're slightly too strong. They're a little bit too intense for the drawing and has too much hierarchy in the drawing. We can select these elements here. We can change that style and maybe drop the blacks down to a gray, or we can drop the opacity to maybe 50% to make them much softer. Let's do 40%. So they're dropping more into the background and they feel less harsh in the drawing. So then the elements that are drawing attention to are the kind of the walls, the partitions, and the kind of key elements with the furniture and not necessarily stairs, etc. Now, if you wanted to actually add a fill or a hatch to this particular space, you can do this in 2 ways. You can either actually draw a shape itself using the polyline, for example. We can draw a shape around this theatre, for example, and you'll see it snaps in the corner. And you can see that it's covering the layer visible. So if we select layer at the top, we drop it down to zones and we'll know that that zone is behind based on the hierarchy of layers. You can then change that fill to a red, for example, or a black, or however color sees fit, or you can go to texture and hatch and you can create maybe let's do a carpet texture, for example. So let's type in carpet. We can do a light gray. We can then change that opacity to 50% if you wanted to add that hatch. Now, because of the tone of the drawing and the architectural quality that I want to show in terms of a kind of analog and a sketchy feel, and we want to make sure that we communicate that through this drawing, I'm actually instead just going to add some hatches to these drawings. And so another alternative way of doing that is you can select your zone and you can apply a zone to a certain area which is enclosed by certain walls. And if it isn't, you can see here that this is a zone divider that is creating that separation for that zone. If we select this element, we can also apply a hatch to this. So we're going to apply a hatch. We're going to do it as almost like a grid. So at the moment, this is quite an intense grid, but if we select this, we drop it down to maybe 30%. We then can scale up this grid because it's currently quite a small. Edit that down to maybe 3. And then we also want to rotate it so it follows parallel to the entrance space. So you can do that by doing edit transform. You can then do rotation and you can keep rotating it until about 36 degrees in order for it to be parallel with the entrance. And I know this currently looks quite strong. We'll make it much lighter. And you can see that now it just adds that slight graphic touch to the drawing. And you can do the same to the cafe. You can do the same to any of these workshop spaces. You can select the zone and then you can change any of the textures and gradients and filters as you please in the drawing. The idea is to build a visual language that feels consistent with the original sketch, which is calm, clear and intentional. This is definitely the type of graphic communication that I enjoy. With the plan developed, I'll now set up a presentation layout where the drawings and presentation will come together. Now the beauty with Rayon is that you can build your model and set up your presentation in the same space. And this works through paper and model canvases. So the canvas that we've just been working on is the model canvas where we have our plan. But if we head over to our paper canvas, which you can set up at the top right here, you can then head to layers, you can add a new page, and we can then maybe customize that page to an A1. Now in this case, I want to give it a bit of a competition feel. So we're going to make it feel like a bit of a competition page. So I'm actually going to rotate this to portrait, and I'm actually going to adjust some of these elements depending on the drawing and how I'm going to compose the drawing. I'm going to make it a bit of a composite drawing. So I'm going to head over to here, click New, View, Plan, and this will create a viewport into the model canvas where my plan is. And you can then adjust that on the right hand side by doing 1 to 100 or maybe 1 to 200 in this case, because we want a lot to show. We can then crop this down, and I'm going to pull this down and create a bit of a composite drawing. So you'll see here that I've kind of pulled the landscape down, and this is going to become a bit of a backdrop for my elevations and sections that I'll show you in a minute. So then we'll do the plus again, we'll do view, and then we're going to do a view into these sections. Now you can see here I've created some sections and elevations for this particular project, which I'm then going to pull together as part of a composite drawing for this presentation. So we can crop that down. We can then change this to maybe 1 to 250 as well, so it's the same scale. And we're going to crop this in, and we're going to drop this onto the page below. And now we have an elevation that's running alongside the floor plan, which I think really works well graphically. And as you can see, it's maintaining that kind of sketchy, that analog feel to the drawing. Now the same, we're going to do a new view to the sections again, but instead I'm going to do it to the actual section. So that's just the elevation we brought in. Now a really great tool to use to make sure that these drawings are aligned is the grids. So if you select shapes, you go down to guidelines, and you can see here you can change that to vertical. We choose a certain element like the corner piece there. We can then make sure we move this in place in line so that the drawings are definitely in line on the page. Now you can do the same by now adding in maybe a title. So we could pull this down, we could add a title in using the text. So this was a project called the Architectural Futures, which we can scale up significantly by changing this here. We pull that in so it drops down, and then we could even have that as a hint of red. Now with a bit of finesse and a bit more work into the drawing, adding annotations, adding certain elements that are now really bringing the drawing to life and adding the detail that's required. I've added some more cars and activity with people, etc. You can see here that now we can compose a full presentation with the title, with some hierarchy of text. And then you can see here we're building almost like a competition board for this project to show how you can compose your drawings using that sketch. So we've gone from sketch all the way through to a full finished presentation, which works fantastically well in this format without losing that initial quality of that architectural sketch. What I like here is that the drawing and the layout stay connected. If the plan changes, the presentation updates automatically. You can even include the original sketch alongside the finished floor plan. It adds context and tells the story of how the design has evolved. Sketching is still where ideas come from, but having a smooth path from sketch to drawing makes the whole process feel more fluid. This plan can now grow into a full drawing set, but it all started here with a pen and some tracing paper and a simple workflow. Thanks for following along. Follow the link in the description to set up a free Rayon account and to access the drawings from this video. I'll see you in the next one.